Welcome to Through Glass Darkly Radio. You're listening to us on United Public Radio, and the intro song was Mark of the Doomslayer by Karl Casey at White Bat Audio. So happy Easter to those who celebrate, happy Sunday to those who don't. It's good to see everybody tonight. I have let's see, an intentionally ambiguous title. It's not disclosure timeline, it's timeline disclosure. Okay. Now that could mean a lot of different things, right? It could also mean, if you want to go with absolute crazy, it could be, disclosing what timeline we're on, but it's not. So what I wanted to do tonight was the fundamental conclusion. I think last week we talked with Dr. John Brandenburg about what he thinks will be a disclosure of life on Mars, et cetera, et cetera. And I think recently the scientific community disclosed that they discovered, I can't remember the name of the chemical, but we'll get into that tonight. But there's a planet about 124 light years away, sufficiently far away not to freak people out, that they're 99.7% chance that, or likelihood that there is life on that world, given the chemical signatures that they're detecting with the James Webb telescope. And what I'm going to kind of cover is the history of disclosure up until this point, why I think we're never going to get real disclosure for any number of reasons. The only way we're going to get it is if we kind of figure it out for ourselves. And I think we're more likely to see a Western civilizational collapse long before we'll see any disclosure. And I think that civilizational collapse is coming. I had like a private conversation with my friend Lynn Buchanan And I'm not going to say specifics, but there's stuff that I thought would happen, with just having military training and things like that, and he saw this in his remote viewing project back in 1996. So I would expect another pandemic of sorts to come. They're already, uh, you know, mass murderers, like, and I'm not going to say his name, but you all know who he is. Rhymes with algae, is already talking about a respiratory illness that's coming that will be much more severe, et cetera. And then, of course, they're going to have you take their gene therapies and whatnot. Um, what that will likely precipitate is, um, that and other things, right? There's also a solar minimum that is approaching that will peak in, I think, 2035, and that's when kind of the peak casualty rate is supposed to happen. After which people get fed up, and the targeted the purgings begin. After the elites um, destroy the lives of so many people that it no longer becomes something that can be ignored, whether wittingly or unwittingly. The population likely just loses it, in a way that is not bad for the population, but bad for the people who are in charge at that time. Okay. So again, hopefully this does not happen. Hopefully it doesn't. But looking at the signs, we're in the fourth turning. Things are not looking great. When a solar minimum happens, you have crop failures, right? You produce less food. There's going to be fewer people to harvest that food. And again, it could just be a completely harmless thing. Nothing happens. But if you look it up, it's a potential scenario, and there's people running things right now can barely chew gum, let alone manage something like this. So, um, you're seeing signs of propaganda. You're seeing signs of this desire for control over speech, and I just don't think it. I don't think it. Well, it does matter who's in the White House, but it's just whether or not you get it fast or you get it slow. That's kind of the basis. I don't think there's anything Trump can do to stop it. I think Harris probably would have accelerated it, but think of it as a great filter. And anyway, I don't mean to depress anyone on Easter Sunday, but I've come to the realization that I've been lied to my entire life. Not everything, but almost everything's a lie. The only thing, I don't even know where, I believe where I was born because my parents told me, but I don't know, right? You really don't know much of anything. So unless I derive something from personal experience, you can't trust anything anymore. You just can't. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about is going to be down this dark path. But let's see what folks are saying. Oh wow, strange stuff. Mary Maria Pavic is writing. Strange stuff is already happening to me. My lighter disappeared, and then my glasses, which I put in my bed. Who knows? This isn't the first time. Things just instantly disappeared in my life. Later thieves. All right. So let's get started on the topic of the day. I have this one is voluminous, right? There's a ton of stuff here. So if I can just find it. Okay, here we go. All right. So unidentified aerial phenomena, UAPs, formerly known as UFOs, have captured the human imagination for decades. Reports of strange objects in the sky and claims of contact with non-human intelligences date back to the mid-20th century and even earlier. Over time, a complex narrative has evolved, one that blends documented events, government investigations, alleged cover-ups, whistleblower testimonies, and far-reaching speculation. This report takes an open-minded yet grounded look at the history of UAP phenomena and U.S. government disclosure efforts, beginning with early crash rumors in the 1940s and ending with contemporary scientific discoveries that frame the possibility of life beyond Earth. We will clearly distinguish between established facts and controversial claims, citing sources where possible, and assess prospects for full disclosure of any non-human presence. All right, so we're going to start the early period. It's, UFO crash claims, 1941 to 1948. So the first is the alleged 1941 Cape Girardeau crash. Long before flying saucers became a household name, there was a little-known story of a crash in Cape Girardeau, Missouri in 1941. According to local lore, first brought to light decades later, a round silver disc craft crashed in late 1941 outside Cape Girardeau. Reverend William Huffman was reportedly called to pray over what was thought to be a routine plane crash, only to find a broken craft and non-human bodies at the site. One account relayed by the Reverend's granddaughter and investigated by author Paul Blake Smith, who I've interviewed on this podcast. He wrote a great book about it. Describes small, gray-skinned beings with large black eyes, 2 dead and 1 dying amidst the wreckage. As the story goes, the U.S. military quickly arrived, swore witnesses to secrecy, and whisked away the debris and bodies, telling locals the event didn't happen for reasons of national security. No official documentation of this incident exists. When queried in recent years, the FBI, the Army, Air Force reported finding no records of any such crash. Thus, the Cape Girardeau case remains entirely anecdotal and speculative, essentially a local legend of an early UFO crash and cover-up. It would, however, foreshadow later, better-known incidents involving alleged crash saucers. Then we move to the 1947 Roswell incident. No discussion of UAP history is complete without Roswell in 1947. The archetypal UFO crash legend. In early July 1947, during a wave of flying disc sightings across the U.S., a rancher near Roswell, New Mexico, found strange debris in his field. The Army Air Force Base at Roswell issued a startling press release on July 8, 1947, claiming to have recovered a flying saucer. The news made headlines nationwide, yet barely a day later, the Army abruptly retracted the story, stating the debris was only a weather balloon with a radar reflector attached. This explanation was accepted for decades. This incident faded from headlines and was largely forgotten in the public arena by the 1950s. Roswell roared back to life in the late 1970s when UFO researchers like Stanton Friedman and the authors of the Roswell incident, written in 1980, interviewed witnesses and concluded the weather balloon story was a quote-unquote cover-up. They alleged the wreckage, supposedly from an extraterrestrial craft, had been flown to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, and that a swap had been made with mundane balloon debris for the press. Fantastic claims emerged of alien bodies recovered at the crash site and kept under secrecy. This was the era when the notion of a secret government committee, Majestic 12, first appeared via purported leaked documents, positing that President Truman had created a panel to hide UFO evidence. Those MJ-12 documents were later proven fraudulent, but they greatly fueled conspiracy lore. Yeah, I'm not so sure about if they were proven to be fraudulent. That might be, I'm not saying that they weren't, but that might be one of those things that's still hotly debated. A sensational alien autopsy film even surfaced in 1994, later admitted to be a hoax. Rather than quelling the rumors, these false revelations only cemented Roswell's place in UFO mythology. Roswell became synonymous with UFO cover-ups, a tourist draw spawning museums and annual UFO festivals. On the official side of things, the U.S. Air Force finally declassified the truth behind the weather balloon story in the 1990s. In 1994, the Air Force acknowledged the Roswell wreckage had indeed not been a normal weather balloon. It was debris from Project Mogul, a then secret program deploying high-altitude balloons to detect Soviet nuclear tests. In other words, there was a cover story, but to conceal Cold War surveillance tech, not alien visitors. The Air Force's follow-up report in 1997, Case Closed, sought to explain the persisting tales of alien bodies. It concluded witnesses in Roswell might be conflating separate events, such as crash test dummies dropped in the 1950s in a deadly plane crash, with the 1947 incident. These prosaic explanations convinced most scientists, but many UFO believers remained unconvinced. To them, the official line that Roswell involved no extraterrestrials is itself part of a decades-long cover-up. Thus, Roswell stands as a dual legend. The history books, a misidentified balloon accident, the popular imagination, the start of the modern cover-up regarding non-human intelligence. The funny thing about the crash test dummy excuse is that they didn't use crash test dummies at that time. So just putting that out there. Okay, so then we move on to the Aztec, New Mexico crash of 1948. Hot on the heels of Roswell's notoriety came another alleged crash, one that would become highly controversial and often labeled a hoax. In March 1948, a year after Roswell, stories circulated that a 100-foot diameter flying saucer had made a controlled crash landing in Hart Canyon near Aztec, New Mexico, with 16 humanoid bodies recovered by the Army. This incident was publicized in 1950 by journalist Frank Scully in his book Behind the Flying Saucers, making it one of the first widely reported claims of a recovered UFO. Scully's account, supposedly sourced from two insiders, even asserted the craft was taken by the military for secret research and the whole event hushed up. For decades, however, the Aztec crash was debunked as a fabrication. In the mid-1950s, investigative reporting exposed that Scully had been duped by two con men, Silas Newton and Leo Gebauer, who were peddling fake alien technology devices as part of a get-rich-quick scheme. In fact, Newton and Gebauer were later convicted of fraud in 1953 for related scams. The mystery metal they touted from the saucer was just aluminum, and their supposed technological marvels were cobbled from radio parts. The Aztec saucer tale appeared thoroughly discredited by these revelations, essentially a UFO hoax to swindle investors. Yet the story didn't entirely die. Starting in the 1970s, some ufologists resurrected the Aztec incident, convinced that perhaps the hoax explanation was a clever cover story itself. Yep, probably. Books as recently as the 2010s, for example, the Aztec UFO incident by Ramsey et al., argue there is evidence a crash really occurred, alleging that the government engineered the hoax narrative to discredit the event. A declassified 1950 FBI memo, the Hoddle memo, described secondhand reports of a New Mexico saucer crash also fueled these theories until the FBI publicly clarified in 2013 that the memo was simply a second or third-hand claim, never investigated, likely repeating the same hoax story. In short, the Aztec crash is widely considered unsubstantiated. Mainstream investigators treat it as a cautionary tale of fraud, while some in the UFO community still suspect a deeper cover-up. This pattern, an initial claim, official debunking, and lingering believers would recur throughout UFO history. Okay, then there's the official investigations versus secrecy between the 1940s and 1960s. In the wake of incidents like Roswell, U.S. authorities launched formal UFO investigations, even as rumors of secrecy swirled. The U.S. Air Force's Project Blue Book from 1952 to 1969 was the most famous official study of UFO reports. Blue Book ultimately dismissed the vast majority of sightings as misidentifications or natural phenomena and concluded UFOs pose no national security threat. When it was terminated in 1969, the Air Force declared it found no evidence of extraterrestrial vehicles. This public stance of denial and trivialization led many to allege a cover-up. They believed truly unexplained cases were being concealed or that a separate secret investigation continued out of public view. Indeed, during the Blue Book years, there were classified programs like Project Aquarius, allegedly focusing on UFO data, rumored in UFO circles, although hard evidence of such programs was lacking. The tension between public skepticism and private belief even existed within government. In 1953, the CIA's Robertson panel recommended debunking UFO sightings and reducing public interest, partly to prevent false alarms during the Cold War. Yet behind closed doors, intelligence agencies quietly monitored certain UFO reports. This contradictory behavior, outwardly nothing to see here, move along, while quietly keeping tabs, helps seed the notion that the government knows more than it tells. The alleged Majestic 12 group is a case in point. The MJ-12 documents, first circulated in the 1980s, claim that a high-level committee of scientists and military leaders was formed in 1947 to secretly study retrieved alien craft and bodies, beginning with Roswell. Though these specific documents were exposed as hoaxes, the idea they described, a permanent conspiracy of silence, became a staple of UFO lore. In essence, from the late 1940s onward, two narratives ran in parallel. The official line that UFOs yielded no evidence of aliens, and an undercurrent of suspicion that a massive cover-up was in play to hide the truth. Fueling the cover-up narrative were the testimonies of various whistleblowers, individuals, often former military or government personnel, who came forward with claims of secret knowledge about UFOs. Some of these claims are highly controversial and lack proof, but they have nonetheless become famous in UFO history. In 1989, in a famous television interview, physicist Bob Lazar claimed he had been employed at a secret facility, S4, near Area 51 in Nevada, to reverse engineer alien spacecraft. Lazar described in detail a saucer-like craft powered by an exotic fuel, element 115, and even alleged he read briefing documents about extraterrestrials involved with Earth for 10,000 years. This story introduced the general public to Area 51's lore and popularized the idea that the U.S. government has alien technology in its possession. However, Lazar's credibility is widely disputed. No evidence of the supposed craft or element 115 has been provided, and investigators found Lazar fabricated parts of his education and employment history. Maybe not. Many UFO researchers themselves regard his claim with skepticism. Still, Lazar's account had enduring cultural impact, reinforcing beliefs that the government is covertly studying retrieved alien hardware in hidden bases. Then there's Philip J. Corso in 1997. He was a retired Army colonel. More specifically, he was an Army intelligence colonel. Corso wrote the day after Roswell, claiming he personally handled alien artifacts from the Roswell site while assigned to the Pentagon in 1961. He asserted he helped seed American industries with this recovered technology, which included fiber optics, integrated circuits, etc. Corso's book provided a dramatic insider narrative, but like Lazar's, its claims are largely unverified and considered speculative by historians. Well, or it's a first-hand account by the guy who handled this stuff. But, to each his own. It nevertheless added to the notion that breakthrough technologies may have extraterrestrial origins. It doesn't necessarily have to be extraterrestrial, right? Could be interdimensional, could be something else. A theme also later echoed by Paul Hellyer and others. Then there's the Disclosure Project witnesses of 2001. In May 2001, physician Stephen Greer held a press conference at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C., presenting dozens of former Air Force, FAA, and senior community personnel who gave brief testimonials about UFO encounters and alleged secret programs. This event, known as the Disclosure Project, was an attempt to pressure the U.S. government into acknowledging an extraterrestrial presence. While the witnesses provided intriguing stories ranging from radar tracking of UFOs to knowledge of alien bodies, no official records or physical evidence accompanied these claims, leaving them as anecdotal accounts. The ufology community's reaction was hopeful. Greer and his followers believed disclosure with a capital D was imminent. Indeed, ufologists have a perpetual faith in the imminence of disclosure, a rapturous confession by the government of its UFO secrets. However, official response was non-existent or dismissive. The Bush White House, for instance, simply stated it had no evidence of any extraterrestrial contact with humans when petitioned on the matter in 2011. Then there's recent whistleblowers from 2017 to 2023. A turning point came in late 2017, not from a lone leaker, but from investigative journalism. The New York Times revealed the existence of a Pentagon program called ATIP, Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, that had quietly studied UAP reports for years. Along with this revelation came officially released Navy cockpit videos showing unknown objects exhibiting extraordinary flight characteristics. This disclosure was significant. It was an admission by the Department of Defense that unidentified aerial phenomena are real and puzzling, though no alien connection was stated. Following this, several former officials associated with ATIP and its successor efforts became vocal. For instance, Luis Elizondo, allegedly ATIP's former director, spoke out about the need to investigate UAPs without stigma. And Chris Mellon, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense, advocated for congressional attention. Their efforts led to public congressional hearings on UAP and the establishment of a new UAP task force, now the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. Most dramatic, perhaps, was the testimony of David Grush in 2023. Grush, an Air Force intelligence veteran, filed a whistleblower complaint and then testified under oath to Congress that the U.S. government and defense contractors have been running a multi-decade crash retrieval and reverse engineering program outside of proper oversight. He stated that non-human craft had been recovered and that 9 human biologics, or alien bodies, were in U.S. custody. Grush did not present physical evidence in the public hearing, citing classification restrictions, but claimed he had given Congress and the Inspector General detailed information, including the exact locations of these secret programs. His testimony remains unproven, but is notable in that it occurred in an official setting with legal accountability. It has renewed calls among some lawmakers and the public for greater transparency. The Pentagon, for its part, denied Grush's specific claims, stating it had no verifiable information about any alien materials or reverse engineering projects. The veracity of Grush's allegations is still the subject of intense debate. They are either one of the most important revelations of our time, or, in the skeptical view, perhaps misinformation or mistaken belief. Either way, the fact such claims were aired in Congress at all underscores how the discourse around UAPs has shifted in recent years toward a slightly more open-minded stance in government. In summary, the historical arc from the 1940s to today shows a progression. Initial secrecy and dismissal met by outsider accusations of cover-up. Periodic whistleblowers and leaks alleging hidden truths, and recently some confirmation that the government did conceal its interest in UFOs, for instance, ATIP, even while denying it. What has actually been confirmed publicly so far is far more modest than the extravagant claims of aliens and treaties, but it's enough to indicate that something real, though unexplained, is flying in our skies, and authorities know it. This tension between acknowledged unknowns and unacknowledged knowns feeds the ongoing push for disclosure. All right, let's see how we're doing. Just go to look at some of the comments. Okay. Thank you, Scranton, for. Yeah, I think the absolute minimum, I think, probably reaches the, in 2035, and then because it's a gradual thing, so it gradually goes to the minimum and then gradually moves away from the minimum. But yeah, it's probably right. Yes, the grand solar minimum. That's correct. Interesting. Yeah, you should see what you can find down there. Hey, Miss Tammy, good to see you. How you doing, Logan? Good to see you. Yeah, so Maria Pavic is writing, they've made clone-like races that they use as puppets to rule over other civilizations. They put them in positions of power to rule over this. Have been doing it since Atlantis. Yeah, given how much of a disaster the people who run the world are right now, I would not be surprised. I'm not saying it's true, but I would not be surprised. How you doing, Paco Pete? Good to see you. So Maria Pavic is saying the use is a food source, negative energy, and even the flesh. That's why they try to prevent us from advancing. They want us to keep us in prison here for the. Could be. And they hate truth tellers. That's why they interfere in our lives, like stealing things, etc. Huh. That sounds like Collins Elite stuff. Hey, Jalal, good to see you. Yes, definitely stop smoking. That's good. Thank you, Miss Tammy. All right, let's get back into it. I just wanted to take a break because I'm going through a lot of material. Okay, let's continue. All right. So through the course of what is obviously a cover up, I just who knows what the extent of it is. There are alleged secret agreements and programs that have could be disinformation or they could actually be real. Who knows? Over the years, a number of sensational allegations have been made about top secret programs, treaties, and collaborative projects between the U.S. government and non-human intelligences. These claims are highly speculative and not supported by documented evidence, yet they form a rich tapestry of UFO conspiracy lore. Below, we examine a few of the most infamous legends, emphasizing that these remain unproven and are regarded as folklore or disinformation by most, but not all, historians. The 1954 Greada Treaty. This is President Eisenhower and the aliens. One persistent rumor in UFO circles is that President Dwight D. Eisenhower personally met with extraterrestrials and forged an agreement. According to this legend, often called the Greada Treaty, in 1954, Eisenhower had a secret meeting with a race of aliens known as the Greys at either Edwards Air Force Base or Holloman Air Force Base. The purported terms of the treaty were stark. The U.S. government and the aliens agreed not to interfere with each other, and in exchange for access to advanced technology, the U.S. would allow the ETs to abduct a limited number of humans for experiments, provided those humans were returned safely and their names were given to a secret committee, Majestic 12, overseeing the arrangement. In other words, the Greada Treaty is said to formalize a cold bargain, technology for tolerance of abductions. This tale also dovetails with claims that around the same time, a breakaway group of friendly aliens offered help to humanity, warning about our use of nuclear weapons, but they were turned away because they would not share weapons technology, leaving the door open for the less benevolent Greys to make their deal. It's a dramatic story, and there's no evidence that such a treaty ever occurred. Well, we'll just keep going. The Eisenhower meeting scenario appears to originate from anecdotal accounts that surfaced in the 1980s and 90s, further popularized by authors like Bill Cooper and whistleblowers of dubious credibility. Mainstream sources have never corroborated it. In fact, when asked, Eisenhower's relatives and historians have pointed out that Eisenhower's documented winter 1954 schedule included a brief disappearance at Palm Springs, often cited by treaty believers, but contemporary press indicated he had a chipped tooth and visited a dentist. I guess these guys never heard of a cover story, but let's keep going. Not met with aliens. Nevertheless, the Greada Treaty has become UFO gospel in some communities, tying together the alien abduction phenomenon with government complicity. Even an Associated Press article on UFO conspiracy beliefs noted that outer reaches of the community fervently hold that Eisenhower signed a secret treaty with gray aliens in 1954. They see the creation of the U.S. Majestic 12 group, the surge in abductions afterwards, and even things like the mutilation phenomena, which we'll discuss later, as fallout from the alleged accord. It must be stressed that no declassified document or credible witness from the Eisenhower administration has validated any of this. The Greada Treaty remains a modern myth, albeit a fascinating one that reflects Cold War anxieties and the mystique of President Eisenhower's leadership style during the UFO era. I definitely think there's more to it. I think if you look at the BSRA archives, you'll find more evidence that something happened there. Like there was a meeting. I don't know if a treaty was made, but there's documented evidence there, particularly, as I said, in the BSRA archives. All right, then there's Project Serpo, which is an alleged interplanetary exchange program. And this one I think is pretty wild. Okay, I have no way to verify this one. Even more cinematic is the story of Project Serpo, an alleged human-alien exchange program between the U.S. and an extraterrestrial civilization. According to this account, which surfaced anonymously on UFO forums in 2005, the scenario goes like this. In the aftermath of Roswell, in 1947, one ET survivor, EBE-1, helped arrange contact with its home planet in the Zeta Reticuli star system. Eventually, in 1965, 12 specially trained American military astronauts were sent on a secret mission to the aliens' planet known as Serpo, aboard an alien craft. The team was to spend 10 years on Serpo, learning about the alien Eben race and sharing cultural knowledge. The story claims that only 8 of the 12 returned in 1978. 2 died on Serpo. 2 decided to stay behind there. And those returnees were kept in isolation until the early 1980s for debriefing. Fantastic details are provided about Serpo's environment, the aliens' peaceful society, and even the relativistic spaceflight. It supposedly took only 10 months traveling at 40 times light speed to cover the 39 light-year distance, an impossibility by known physics. The entire exchange program was said to have been top secret, known to only a few in the government. Anonymous postings about Serpo were compiled, and eventually a book was written by Len Kasten, treating the story as true. In reality, Project Serpo is almost certainly a work of fiction or a deliberate hoax. UFO researchers investigating the 2005 claims tracked them to a trio of known pranksters in the UFO scene, one being a former Air Force sergeant, Richard Doty, who had been involved in disinformation campaigns in the past. Okay, that's pretty good. If he's associated with it, it's probably not real. The Serpo saga appears to borrow elements from science fiction. Notably, it resembles the plot of Spielberg's Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which ends with a human exchange program. Serpo proponents even suggest Spielberg was in the know. Rational analyses have pointed out numerous logical and scientific flaws. For example, the mismatch in distance and travel time, the glaring lack of evidence and inconsistent timelines. Indeed, this is from Rational Wiki, so it's obvious disinformation. It could still be right, but anything from Rational Wiki is basically disinformation. Indeed, Rational Wiki bluntly calls Serpo a science fiction fantasy launched as though true. It fooled some credulous UFO enthusiasts. By all measures, Project Serpo falls into the realm of internet era folklore. It is useful here as an illustration of how elaborate and detailed such unverified stories can become, a sort of UFO mythology paralleling real aerospace history. While entertaining, Serpo's claims are not backed by any credible documentation, and no government agency has ever acknowledged such an exchange program. It remains a cautionary tale in ufology about vetting sources. Look, it's probably unlikely to be true, but I wouldn't be that strong and say categorically. It's like, how do you prove a counterfactual? All right, then you have secret underground bases, okay? The DUMBs, right? Dulce and others. Another frequent theme in UFO conspiracy literature is the existence of underground bases where government and alien collaborations purportedly occur. The most famous of these is the Dulce base, said to lie under the Archuleta Mesa near Dulce, New Mexico. The Dulce story began in the late 1970s when a businessman and radio electronics enthusiast named Paul Benowitz became convinced he was intercepting signals from an alien craft from around Kirtland Air Force Base and the nearby Sandia Labs in Albuquerque. Benowitz's obsession grew, and by 1980, he believed aliens had a secret facility underground at Dulce, conducting sinister experiments on humans and livestock. His claims, some of which may have been influenced or exacerbated by disinformation fed to him by Air Force intelligence. Rick Doty, again, folks, specifically, an ironic subplot spread in UFO circles. By the mid-1980s, prominent ufologists like John Lear were picking up on the Dulce tale, adding their own twists. Lear even claimed independent confirmation of the base, and one writer used the pen name Jason Bishop III to publish lurid details. He later admitted he had fabricated those stories. According to the Dulce mythos, this underground base is a joint human-alien biogenic lab where terrible experiments are done. Think alien-human hybrids, cloned monstrosities, etc. And at some point, a violent conflict, the Dulce Wars, broke out between aliens and a U.S. Special Forces team in the caverns, resulting in many deaths. Some versions of the story align this conflict with the supposed breaking of the Greada Treaty if aliens overstepped the abduction quotas. It's a horror-tinged narrative that we'd be at home in an X-Files episode. Despite the sensational claims, no evidence has ever emerged of a base at Dulce. Geologically, Archuleta Mesa is remote and rugged, but multiple investigations and even a tourist UFO conference in Dulce have found nothing concrete, only locals who recall seeing unexplained lights in the sky, which could be test aircraft. Serious researchers classify Dulce Base as a classic conspiracy theory, a story that snowballed over time with added layers of intrigue. Political scientist Michael Barkin noted that the idea of deep underground missile installations in the Cold War may have given superficial plausibility to the Dulce legend, but the claims of genetic experiments and firefights put it well outside even the most far-fetched reports of secret bases. In other words, it's an extreme tall tale even by UFO standards. The Dulce papers, mysterious diagrams, and documents that occasionally surface online have never been authenticated. Paul Benowitz himself was institutionalized for a time due to his paranoia. It's now understood he was likely the target of a disinformation campaign by Air Force agents who fed him fake UFO data to distract him from real classified projects, inadvertently seeding one of the wildest UFO legends in the process. Beyond Dulce, other alleged alien bases get mentioned. For instance, some claim Area 51 in Nevada has underground levels housing extraterrestrial craft. We know that Area 51 is a real secret flight test facility because its existence was officially acknowledged in 2013. By the way, long after Bob Lazar came out with his claims. But no evidence of aliens there has surfaced. Similarly, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio is often rumored to store alien material stemming from Roswell lore. Another is Mount Shasta in California, tied more to folklore of ancient beings. The common thread is a belief that somewhere hidden from public view, humans and aliens might be working side by side. As of now, these remain unverified claims. In the case of Dulce, we can fairly say it's a modern myth, even if inspired by genuine cattle mutilations or clandestine military flights. The extravagant stories of an alien underground lab have no factual corroboration. They don't talk about Phil Schneider. Phil Schneider claims to have actually been there. Who knows? He was a geologist, apparently. That said, the cultural impact of the Dulce legend has been significant. It introduced the disturbing idea that shadowy elements of our government might be in cahoots with aliens in unethical activities, reinforcing the darkest perceptions of cover-up narratives. Beyond crash retrievals and secret treaties, the UFO-UAP topic has entangled itself with a range of bizarre phenomena reported from the 1960s onward. Two notorious ones often mentioned in the same breath as UAPs are cattle mutilations and alien abductions. These may or may not be directly related to craft in the sky, but many theorists have tried to connect the dots, suggesting they are part of an overall pattern of extraterrestrial activity on Earth. Here we explore these phenomena, noting where speculation runs ahead of the evidence. All right, so starting in the 1970s, ranchers across the American West began to report a grisly and puzzling trend. Cattle and other livestock were being found dead, with surgical, bloodless mutilations. Typically, the carcasses had certain organs or body parts cleanly excised: ears, eyes, tongues, reproductive organs, and intestinal, lower intestinal tissue. I'm not going to say the A word. With an almost clinical precision. The rest of the body was often left untouched, drained of blood, and there were no tracks or predator marks around the remains. Over just a few years, thousands of such cases were logged, spanning states from Colorado and New Mexico to Nebraska and beyond. The wave peaked around 1975 when Colorado alone saw nearly 200 mutilation reports between April and October, garnering so much attention that the Colorado Associated Press voted it's the state's number one story of the year. Public concern rose to the point that U.S. senators got involved. Senator Floyd Haskell of Colorado urged the FBI to investigate, and Senator Harrison Schmitt of New Mexico, a former Apollo astronaut, held a symposium on the issue. Under pressure, the FBI did open a limited inquiry in 1979 focused on cases on New Mexico's Indian reservations. The theories to explain cattle mutilations span a wide spectrum. Some law enforcement and ranchers suspected cult activity or satanic rituals, given the odd nature of the cuts. In fact, a 1980 Royal Canadian Mounted Police investigation blamed a cult for mutilations in Alberta, and an Iowa report also pointed to Satanist groups. Others believed it was covert government action. Unmarked black helicopters were frequently reported near mutilation sites, leading ranchers to suspect that some federal agency was covertly harvesting cattle, perhaps to test for radiation or develop biological weapons. This got so prevalent that in Nebraska, the National Guard had to order its helicopters to fly at higher altitudes to avoid panicky ranchers from shooting at them. The most extreme popular theory, however, implicated extraterrestrials. Ufologists posited that aliens might be conducting biological sampling of Earth's livestock for unknown purposes, monitoring our food supply, collecting genetic material, etc. Notably, many mutilation reports coincided with UFO sightings or mysterious lights in the sky, and investigators like Linda Moulton Howe took the ET hypothesis seriously. Howe's award-winning 1980 documentary, A Strange Harvest, examined cattle mutilations, and in her 1989 book, An Alien Harvest, she concluded that alien life forms were likely involved, potentially linked to human abduction reports as well. Officially, after years of study, no clear culprit was identified. The FBI's own investigation in 1979 was inconclusive. Their final report suggested most cases were due to natural predation and ordinary scavenger activity, despite how strange it looked, a conclusion many ranchers flatly rejected. Again, as I said at the beginning, our government just lies to us about almost everything. Some veterinary experts pointed out that what seems like surgical removal could be explained by dehydration and bloating, because the skin splits neatly. And small scavengers like burrowing larvae that selectively eat soft tissues. But this didn't explain the sheer volume of cases or the consistent patterns. To this day, cattle mutilations remain unsolved. I say that again. To this day, cattle mutilations remain unsolved. They are a genuine mystery in that no arrests or concrete explanations have ever closed the case. From a speculative standpoint, if one leans toward a UAP connection, one might envision that if an alien species were covertly studying Earth life and perhaps operating under agreement like the alleged Greada Treaty, they might engage in tissue harvesting of animals as part of their research, leaving behind these creepy calling cards. This idea is impossible to prove, but it has firmly rooted itself in UFO lore. Conversely, skeptics note that attributing it to aliens may be unnecessary when covert human projects like monitoring cattle for effects of past nuclear tests fallout could account for secretive helicopter operations. In any case, cattle mutilations have contributed to the climate of fear and conspiracy around UFOs, reinforcing the image of unknown forces acting in the dead of night beyond the law. Until solid evidence emerges, their link to UAP is only circumstantial. The phenomenon is real in terms of reported incidents, but the explanation is unresolved, making it fertile ground for theories. Perhaps the most personal and unsettling aspect of UFO lore is the alien abduction phenomenon. Cases where individuals report being kidnapped by non-human beings, subjected to examinations or procedures, and then returned, sometimes with fuzzy memories, later recovered under hypnosis. Such accounts were rare or isolated prior to the 1960s, but after one landmark case, the Betty and Barney Hill abductions of 1961, they gradually became more common, especially from the 1970s to the 1990s. The Hill case involved a couple in New Hampshire who reported being taken aboard a craft by humanoid aliens. Their detailed recollections, some obtained via hypnosis, included medical tests and even a star map shown by the aliens. The media coverage of the Hill story in the mid-1960s essentially defined the template for abductions going forward. In the 1970s, other high-profile cases like the Pascagoula, Mississippi abduction in 1973 and the Travis Walton case in 1975 in Arizona, dramatized in the film Fire in the Sky, kept the topic in the public eye. By the 1980s, alien abduction was a well-known cultural idea, spawning books like Whitley Strieber's bestseller Communion in 1987 and support groups for so-called experiencers. Typical abduction narratives are surprisingly consistent across many reports. The abductee often experiences a period of missing time. Perhaps they were driving at night and then suddenly it's hours later. Under hypnosis or through dreams, flashbacks, they recall being taken into a craft by small, gray-skinned beings, the archetypal grays with large heads and eyes, or sometimes other types. They describe being laid out on a table and subjected to clinical procedures, probes, scans, extraction of bodily samples, and especially procedures involving the reproductive system, such as sperm or ova extraction, impregnation, or fetal removal. Abductees frequently report that telepathic communication occurred and that the aliens conveyed messages, often warnings about humanity's destruction of the environment or the dangers of nuclear war. Some even claim to have seen hybrid offspring or been involved in an alien interspecies breeding program. After these experiences, the person is returned to their original location with little or no conscious memory, often left disoriented or with strange marks in their body. Later, psychological trauma, recurring nightmares, or unexplained anxiety prompts them to seek help, at which point the memories surface. From a scientific and psychological standpoint, the consensus explanation for abduction experiences does not involve literal aliens. Research suggests that factors like sleep paralysis, hypnagogic hallucinations, and false memory syndrome can account for many of these reports. Wow, it takes a lot more to believe that nonsense than anything else. Sleep paralysis in particular can cause vividly real visitor hallucinations where a person feels immobilized and senses a presence. This could be interpreted as an abduction by someone predisposed to the idea. The role of hypnosis has also been criticized. Hypnotic regression, used by many abduction researchers to recover memories, is known to potentially implant or reinforce false memories. Psychologists note that popular culture can shape these memories. Indeed, skeptics like Robert Schieffer and Michael Shermer have pointed out that the depiction of aliens and abduction stories often mirrors earlier science fiction tropes. For example, the bald, big-headed alien figures became common after similar creatures were seen in 1950s movies, and the notion of invasive medical exams might reflect human fears more than alien reality. Additionally, abduction claims have notably declined in frequency since the late 1990s, which some attribute to the ubiquity of cell phone cameras. For if abductions were physically happening, one might expect some form of evidence by now. Come on. If they can shut off your nervous system, you ain't taking a picture. In short, mainstream experts view abductions as a psychological cultural phenomenon rather than literal truth. However, not everyone in academia dismissed the experiences. The late Dr. John Mack, a Harvard psychiatry professor, famously studied over 100 alleged abductees and controversially concluded that their experiences could not be explained away easily and that they were largely not psychotic or lying. Max stopped short of saying aliens definitively were doing this, but he did not argue the phenomenon was an authentic mystery that challenged our understanding of reality. He noted that many abductions showed real trauma, yet otherwise were normal, sane individuals. Max's openness to the possibility of some genuine, extraordinary encounter, even if perhaps not physical in a conventional sense, gave some legitimacy to abduction research. Other researchers like Bud Hopkins and David Jacobs actively promoted the idea that abductions were real and widespread. Jacobs hypothesizing a covert alien program to create human-alien hybrids. These claims remain highly controversial. Harvard even convened an inquiry into Max's work in the 1990s due to its radical implications, though ultimately it reaffirmed his academic freedom to study it. If we entertain the speculative scenario where abductions are indeed what they appear to be, extraterrestrials taking humans, then it raises profound questions. Are these abductions random or part of a systematic plan? Could it tie back to things like the Greada Treaty, which allegedly allowed these abductions? Some abductees feel positive about their experiences, believing they were chosen to receive messages, or even that aliens have a benevolent interest in guiding humanity. Others feel violated and view it as malevolent interference. No hard evidence, like clear photographs, physical implants of indisputable alien origin, has yet settled the matter. Thus, in the realm of disclosure, alien abduction is a tricky subject. It's inherently anecdotal and often subjective. Government agencies have not admitted to any knowledge of abductions and indeed would be complicit in a grave crime against citizens if the treaty idea were true. The topic remains mostly in the domain of private research and the experiencers themselves. Any future disclosure of non-human intelligence, if it ever happens, would have to grapple with whether these personal accounts were real interactions or not. Until then, alien abduction stands as a polarizing phenomenon, either a remarkable proof of ongoing alien intrusion or a kind of modern folklore arising from the depths of the human psyche. As a footnote, it's interesting that reports of abduction-like experiences have occurred in many cultures and eras, often interpreted through different lenses. For instance, historical accounts of succubi, elves, jinn, or other supernatural beings kidnapping people share parallels with alien abductions. This suggests the timeless human experience possibly being reskinned in contemporary times as extraterrestrial scientists. Whether that indicates a psychological archetype or a real entity manifesting in different guises is an open question. Then there's speculation of ancient extraterrestrial influences. The UAP topic often extends not just to present-day mysteries, but to ancient history and even our neighboring planets. One bold hypothesis that has gained attention in recent years is the idea of an ancient civilization on Mars that met with catastrophic destruction, possibly at the hands of another intelligence using nuclear weapons. This falls under the realm of astroarchaeology speculation and touches on the broader ancient aliens meme, albeit with a unique twist of a cosmic war. Mars has long fascinated humanity as a potential abode of life. We now know Mars was once much wetter and Earth-like billions of years ago, but some have pushed beyond mainstream science to suggest that intelligent life may have arisen on Mars, and that evidence of its tragic end is evident today. Our friend Dr. John Brandenburg, a plasma physicist who worked on NASA projects, is a chief proponent of this theory. He argues that certain isotopic anomalies detected in Mars's atmosphere and surface can best be explained by the detonation of nuclear devices in Mars's distant path. Specifically, Mars has an unusually high ratio of the isotopes of xenon-129 in its atmosphere, far higher than other planets. On Earth, xenon-129 is a telltale signature produced in large quantities by nuclear fission. For instance, it's a dominant xenon isotope in fallout form from nuclear bomb tests. Specifically, I think it's hydrogen, and that's, a hydrogen bomb, which is a fusion device, not fission. But a fission process kicks off the fusion process. Brandenburg also points to reported high concentrations of radioactive thorium and uranium on the Martian surface in certain regions. In his view, the simplest explanation is that Mars experienced at least two massive airburst nuclear explosions in the ancient past, powerful enough to spread these isotopes globally and turn the surface red with a fine layer of oxidized debris. The red dust of Mars, he suggests, could be rust from a nuclear conflagration. As dramatic as it sounds, Brandenburg has published this hypothesis in conference proceedings and even written a book titled Death on Mars: The Discovery of a Planetary Nuclear Massacre. He speculates that a thriving Martian civilization, perhaps living in the Mars Cydonia Mensae region, where the famous face on Mars and pyramid-like life landforms appear. That's the DNM pyramid. Though those features, though NASA's official story is that those features are now known to be natural mesa and butte formations. Regardless, it also doesn't talk about Galaxis chaos, where there's another face. But anyway, where that area was wiped out by another spacefaring race for unknown reasons, possibly a cosmic war or preemptive strike. In one iteration of the story, he muses that Mars might have had life contemporaneous with early Earth, and maybe a hostile alien civilization felt threatened and genocided the Martians using nukes. It's a jaw-dropping claim, essentially that the ruins of an alien civilization lie in the sands of Mars, and that we ourselves might be at risk if the perpetrators return. What does mainstream science say? Unsurprisingly, most planetary scientists do not endorse the theory. The Xenon-129 enrichment on Mars is real, but conventional explanations exist. Xenon can be produced by other processes, and fractional accumulation over billions of years might occur through atmospheric escape. Okay, but that doesn't explain why every other body, like planetary body or heavenly body in the solar system, does not have that, except for places on Earth where we detonated hydrogen bombs. The presence of uranium and thorium could simply reflect natural concentrations. Mars, like Earth, has radioactive elements in its crust. No smoking gun evidence of a nuclear bomb, such as specific stable isotopes of short-lived fission products or a pattern of blast destruction, has been found by any Mars probe. Keep in mind, this thing is alleged to have occurred over 250 million years ago. So you're not going to see either of those two things. The red color of Mars is explained by long-term oxidation of iron in the soil from ordinary weathering. Essentially, Brandenburg's data are considered interesting, but far from conclusive. All right, that's fair. NASA scientists remain focused on finding microbial life signatures on Mars rather than signs of ancient aliens. Well, I don't know what they're looking for, because Mars has a methane cycle, which is a microbial life signature. Anyway. Indeed, a 2022 rover would be more interested in a fossilized microbe than a fossilized Martian skeleton, none of which have been seen. So they say. The Mars nuking idea is considered extremely fringe. It gained a bit of media attention, often with sensational headlines about scientist claims Martians destroyed by nuclear bomb. And in 2023, it resurfaced on podcasts and social media, sparking public controversy. But it stands as a speculative hypothesis awaiting any real proof. One could argue it's a modern extension of earlier ancient aliens ideas, similar to how Erich von Däniken once posited ET influences on ancient Earth monuments. Now we have Brandenburg positing ET warfare on Mars. It certainly adds a cosmic perspective to the disclosure discussion. If true, it would imply any government secrecy about UFOs might pale in comparison to what's going on out there in our solar system's history. It also tantalizingly suggests a dark reason for the Fermi paradox, the silence of the cosmos. Perhaps intelligences tend to eliminate rivals, meaning civilizations don't last long once they discover each other. For now, the Mars nuclear massacre remains unproven and widely regarded as controversial. It is an intriguing example of how far speculative thinking can go when one connects a few anomalous scientific observations with the big narrative. Should future Mars missions find unmistakably archaeological ruins or certain nuclear isotopes in the soil, like plutonium 244, in unnatural abundance or something, that would change the game. Short of that, it lives in the realm of theory. NASA have certainly not endorsed this idea, though interestingly, some UAP enthusiasts have seized on it to say maybe the U.S. government knows about this, and it's part of why they're cautious with disclosure. For as an example, revealing aliens are real might lead to uncomfortable questions about cosmic threats. That's pure conjecture, of course, as it stands. The destroyed Martian civilization hypothesis is a thought-provoking outlier in extraterrestrial life. Here's the tell for me. The tell for me is, since we've kind of viewed these things from space, we've never sent, as far as I know, any landers to conclusively dispute this hypothesis. NASA's avoided it entirely, both the Cydonia region and the Galaxis Chaos region. Why? Why would you avoid it? Why don't you just, if you're going to lie, if you're going to tell us that nothing's there, show us. And of course they don't. You know why? Because they lie to us. They lie to us about literally everything. While stories of crashes, cover-ups, and cosmic conspiracies abound, it's important to also recognize the strides of mainstream science in exploring life beyond Earth. Interestingly, as scientists uncover more evidence that life might exist elsewhere, the public becomes more open to the possibility that some UFOs could be related to extraterrestrial intelligence. Recent discoveries about exoplanets and biosignatures don't directly prove anything about UAPs on Earth, but they set the stage by establishing that we are not necessarily alone. One development that has excited both astronomers and the UFO-interested public alike is the study of exoplanet K2-18 Bravo. Okay, I'm going to take a break before we get into this. And let's see. Let me just see if I can get back to where I left off. Okay, here we go. Thank you, Terrence. I appreciate it. Terrence is saying, hey, Sean, love the show. YouTube doesn't, so please like, share, and subscribe. Okay. Middle of the night. Hey, how you doing, Timepiece Adventures? Good to see you. Just getting through this. Yeah, Phil Schneider. Yeah, he was crazy too. I mean, he used to collect radioactive rocks and hand them out to people. So you got to take it with a grain of salt. Peaches Cream is writing, if you follow the fourth turning styled paradigms, you have to accept that this is all part of an inescapable cycle of civilizational events that very likely. Okay, so Jalay Jalal's writing, Greer says he has firsthand witnesses that have been the dumbs and lists 18 locations to date. So Maria Pavic, I talk about the fourth turning all the time. Hold on. There's a book that I have not read yet, but I want to read. It's called Generations. It's by William Strauss and Neil Howe. And what it does is it looks at various generations going all the way back. And there are 4 turnings. And each turning is like a civilizational cycle. They last each turning lasts about 20 years, more or less. And there's 4 turnings. So these cycles are 80-year cycles. We are purportedly in the 4th turning, which is kind of the destructive phase. The last 4th turning we were in was World War II. So this is kind of when the old world order dies and a new world order comes to, ascends to take over. So we're in that period right now, which is why everything seems crazy, because it is. Okay, I'm just going through. Yep. Miss Tammy was all over it. She got there long before I did. So yep, Intruders, that's by I think Bud Hopkins. Yeah, no, I don't think sleep paralysis does not cause implants. Agree, Michael. Hey, how you doing, Gray Al? Good to see you, man. Oh boy, I'm not reading that one. Interesting. So DCD 416 is writing there is a MUPAS study needing 10,000 volunteers through Dr. Segala and Gary Nolan, where actual sensors are used to track experiences. So Segala was the original PhD. Interesting. It's on his Hellfire Remote Viewing Club YouTube channel. So Solite US Expat for folks listening, saying, I haven't watched it yet, but Daz Smith did a remote viewing target on the New Jersey drones. It's on his Hellfire Remote Viewing Club channel, YouTube channel, 1 hour, 42 minutes long. Yeah. So Fast Mama Gemma saying the moon is the only hollow moon in the solar system. I don't know, King James, what's going on there? Okay. I'm just sorry, folks, if I'm moving fast. I just want to get through everybody. Yeah, someone definitely. There's definitely infrastructure on that surface. Yeah, there's also the 1 million. Like, well, it was beyond 1 million years, right? They just said they were just told to go back 1 million years, and he didn't see much, and then he just said go back as far as it takes to see people. So it was greater than 1 million years ago. It very likely could have been this period of time. I wouldn't be. Yeah, Michael Kenny saying the CIA wouldn't allow them to go to those areas. I wouldn't be surprised. Interesting. I keep hearing automatic writing recommended. Automatic writing is the first lesson in many psychic classes. And Jolly, good to see you. Very good to see you. Sorry I'm so delayed in my responsiveness. I needed to take a break from reading that. Yeah, I'm sure NASA's been through it. It's been okay. So Scott Ian is writing. It's been suggested that the current push to update public tech is in order to bring us up to speed before known ET groups introduce themselves, avoiding the rule that if two civilizations meet, yeah. Yep, the lesser one perishes. Okay, how are we doing? Okay, looks like I'm about 5 minutes behind on these comments. There's a probability that we have never landed on the moon. Yeah, I believe we landed on the moon. Okay. Yeah, there's a weird story about the Soviets when they sent somebody up to I think it was Phobos, and they saw like this massive craft, and then their video feed just winked out, and they lost the craft. Yeah, that's a good question. Terrence Wills is writing, if they're showing us what they can do with dire wolves, what do you think they aren't showing us? No, dire wolves are like giant wolves, and there's two dire wolf pups that they genetically engineered. They found like the DNA material or we're at least able to replicate it using the wolf genome, and they were able to. So they're like much larger wolves, dire wolves. I did not hear Cernovich's take on the moon landing, but if you read the book, it might be above top secret, but I think they used like a code word Santa Claus, something like that. Like we got some Santa Clauses here or something like that when they were on the moon. It was kind of code for that. Yep. Yeah, that's it's King James. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Cosmonaut released photo of enormous 300-mile long craft shadow over Phobos before feed was cut out. Oh, the woolly moose? I didn't know about that. I did not know about that. Yeah, well, the other problem with all this stuff is you can use CRISPR to create like genetically targeted weapons. Like there's a lot of bad stuff like that. All right, I'm going to get back to our originally scheduled program. So, all right, so this we're going to K2-18 Bravo. All right, so in 2023, a team of astronomers using NASA's powerful new James Webb Space Telescope (JWST) announced the detection of some tantalizing molecules in the atmosphere of K2-18 Bravo, a planet about 120 to 124 light years away in the constellation Leo. Oh, that's weird. You know who else was talking about the constellation Leo? Chris Bledsoe, right? He was talking about sometime next year in 2026 when the red star Regulus shines on the Sphinx at dawn and new knowledge will be revealed. So the red star Regulus is in the constellation of Leo. So let's just put that out there. So K2-18 Bravo is a sub-Neptune exoplanet about 8.6 times the mass of Earth that orbits within the habitable zone of its star, meaning it's at a distance where temperatures would allow liquid water. Previous observations had hinted it might have a hydrogen-rich atmosphere and possibly water vapor. The JWST data in 2023 revealed clear signs of methane, so CH4, and carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Even more intriguing, the data showed a feature consistent with the presence of dimethyl sulfide, DMS. Why is this exciting? On Earth, dimethyl sulfide is a gas that is only produced by living organisms. I say again, it is a gas that is only produced by living organisms, primarily by phytoplankton in the oceans. It's considered a potential biosignature, a chemical that strongly suggests biological activity. The researchers were cautious, labeling it as a possible detection of DMS, not confirmed yet. They will need to follow up observations to verify it, as the signal is at the edge of detectability. Nonetheless, the combination of methane and CO2 with a shortage of ammonia in K2-18 Bravo's air is hard to explain with abiotic chemistry. And one hypothesis is that an ocean could exist beneath the hydrogen atmosphere where life emits these gases. In short, this could be the strongest hint of life so far on a planet outside our solar system. The possible discovery of a biosignature on a planet 120 light years away is profound in its own right. It suggests that life might be fairly common in the galaxy, even existing on worlds quite different from Earth. So K2-18 Bravo is not a rocky Earth clone, but potentially a water-covered Hycean world, which is a hot ocean under a thick atmosphere. Now, connecting this back to UAPs and disclosure, if the scientific community becomes convinced that life, even microbial, has been detected on an exoplanet, the public perception of extraterrestrial life shifts from speculation to accepted reality. It would no longer be a question of do aliens exist, but rather, what are these aliens like? A much more concrete mindset. This could indirectly set the stage for more willingness to accept that some UFOs might be of extraterrestrial origin. Government officials who know of any non-human intelligences might feel less risk of public panic if the population is already acclimatized to the idea that life is out there. And again, this is something that many folks have discussed, right? Where you talk about or speculate about life 124 light years away. It's not as scary because it can't get to us. It can't do all this stuff. And then you gradually work your way backwards with, hey, there's probably life on Titan, right? Which has lots of methane in the atmosphere. There's probably life, or at least microbial life on Mars, where there's a methane cycle there. All right. And then who knows if, and then, hey, there's some artifacts of this ancient civilization on Mars. Well, what happened to it? Oh, we don't know, even though it's probably nuked. But, we'll get there. And then it'll work its way back to, oh, they're already here. Okay. And they've been here for thousands of years or however long. It's worth noting that NASA and other agencies have begun to bridge the UFO topic as well, albeit carefully. In 2023, NASA formed an independent panel to study UAP from a scientific perspective, and although their report found no evidence of extraterrestrial origin in the data, the very fact that such a study happened indicates the stigma is lessening. Simultaneously, discoveries like that on K2-18 Bravo make headlines worldwide, showing that the search for alien life is a legitimate scientific endeavor. We have Mars rovers hunting for microfossils, Europa and Enceladus missions. That's what I meant. I meant Europa, not Titan. Titan's the place where we can get a bunch of like methane and fossil fuels. Basically, it's got it's a tremendous resource from that standpoint. So Europa and Enceladus missions plan to sample subsurface oceans and dozens of exoplanets in habitable zones slated for atmospheric analysis. In a way, the truth about alien life could arrive through a microscope or telescope rather than a government press conference. For instance, if in a few years JWST or successor confirms a mix of gases on K2-18 Bravo that is best explained by a biosphere, we'll essentially have disclosed that we are not alone, albeit with 120 light years of distance. Bringing this back to the core of UFO disclosure, one must consider that perhaps intelligent life is rarer, or at least harder to find than microbial life. But if we find many planets with life signs, it increases the odds that some advanced civilization exists, i.e. the Drake equation in action. Thus, these specific scientific milestones and the UFO disclosure effort might converge. A government admitting, yes, some UAP appear to be technology not of this Earth would be softened by the backdrop, and by the way, we're detecting life all over the galaxy now. In contrast, if we found the galaxy sterile, people might find it harder to accept that aliens are here and only here. In sum, recent scientific developments like the K2-18 Bravo findings reinforce an open-minded outlook. Life beyond Earth is no longer just science fiction, it's increasingly plausible and potentially observable. While these developments don't prove any UFO case is aliens, they do make the idea of aliens more mainstream and credible. This changing mindset is an important element in the disclosure discussion because societal readiness is often cited as a factor in why governments withhold UFO information for fear of shocking the public. As humanity discovers biosignatures on exoplanets or microbes on Mars, the shock factor diminishes. The stage becomes set for a more frank conversation about intelligent life, whether 120 light years away or just maybe already here in some capacity. With the background of historical incidents, conspiracy claims, and scientific context established, we finally arrive at the pressing question. Will the U.S. government and other governments fully disclose an extraterrestrial or non-human presence? What has already been disclosed, and how might future disclosure unfold? Could it be that such intelligences are already here among us, operating subtly? These questions straddle the line between factual analysis and informed speculation. In this portion of this program, we will assess the current state of affairs and possibilities, being clear about what is known and what remains conjecture. So we'll start with what has already been disclosed. In an official sense, no government has explicitly confirm the existence of alien visitors or non-human intelligences. Not explicitly. That level of disclosure, yes, we have evidence of ET, has not happened. However, there have been notable partial disclosures and acknowledgments, especially recently, that shift the landscape. The government has publicly confirmed that UAP, unidentified anomalous phenomena, are real, and that some incidents remained unexplained even after analysis. This is exemplified by the June 2021 ODNI report to Congress, which listed 144 UAP cases since 2004, with the majority unsolved. While that report did not mention aliens at all, it marked the first time since the 1960s that the government admitted a significant number of UFO sightings by military personnel defy prosaic explanation. The Pentagon has also declassified and released UAP videos. The FLIR 1, gimbal, and Go Fast videos taken by Navy fighter jets in 2004 and 2015, which show objects exhibiting extraordinary flight characteristics. Navy pilots and radar operators involved have given testimony that these objects performed maneuvers and speeds beyond known aircraft capabilities. For instance, instantaneous acceleration, hypersonic velocity with no sonic boom, etc. Importantly, the Pentagon has officially stated that these videos are authentic and the phenomenon in them remain unidentified. High-level officials are also talking about UAPs more openly. We've seen members of Congress, including Senators Marco Rubio, Kirsten Gillibrand, and others, speak to the media about the need to investigate UAP for national security. Former CIA Director John Brennan mused in a public interview that some UAP might be a different form of life beyond our current understanding. Even former President Obama acknowledged on a talk show in 2021 that there are objects in the sky. We don't know exactly what they are. We can't confirm. We can't explain how they move. That's been paraphrasing his comments. Such statements don't confirm alien origin, but they show unprecedented candor that there's something genuinely mysterious afoot. Internationally, other governments have also released UFO files or admitted interest. For instance, France's CNES has a department, GEIPAN, that investigates UFO reports and has on occasion stated that a small percentage remain inexplicable. The UK, Brazil, Canada, and others have declassified thousands of UFO reports from past decades. None of these documents prove extraterrestrials, but some contain compelling, unexplained cases that add to the overall evidence pool. Regarding recovered materials, in 2020, Dr. Jacques Vallée and colleagues published a paper analyzing isotopic ratios in some purported UFO debris, finding unusual compositions. The Pentagon's recent program, ATEP and its offshoots, reportedly looked at some metamaterials allegedly from UAPs with claims that these materials had exotic properties. However, details are scant, and it's unclear if any material has been conclusively shown to be of non-earthly manufacture. While some rumors of crash debris exist, and people like Senator Harry Reid have hinted that aerospace companies may have pieces of UFOs, nothing definitive has been publicly rolled out. In summary, what's confirmed is that governments, especially the U.S., take UAP seriously now. They admit there are unknown flying things displaying advanced technology. What's not confirmed is what or who is behind those UAP. Officially, all options are on the table. Foreign adversary drones, advanced tech demos, atmospheric phenomena, or other, with extraterrestrial being a remote hypothetical. Notably, a 2011 White House statement in response to petitions flatly said there was no evidence of government contact with ET or that any entity is hiding such information. That is the latest official line on aliens themselves. If that statement was truthful, it implies either there's generally nothing to disclose or that any ET reality is compartmentalized beyond even the reach of those who drafted the White House response. If it was a lie, then the cover-up continues, at least for now. Among ufologists and disclosure advocates, there's often a feeling that full disclosure is just around the corner. This feeling has persisted for decades. In fact, as the New Yorker humorously noted, UFO believers have a perpetual faith in the imminence of disclosure, always expecting the big announcement any day now. In the 1990s, it was thought the end of the Cold War might prompt disclosure. In the 2000s, Stephen Greer's efforts and the internet buzz kept anticipation high. Now in the 2020s, with Congress actively legislating on UAP transparency, for instance, a 2024 amendment in the NDAA seeking a repository of historical UFO records, there is again a sense that we might be on the threshold of breakthroughs. How likely is imminent disclosure really? It depends on what disclosure means. If we mean official admission of extraterrestrial intelligence, that hinges entirely on whether the government actually has something extraordinary to reveal in the first place. If indeed, hypothetically, they have a crash saucer locked away, or bodies, or ongoing contact, then one could argue the probability of disclosure has never been higher. Because public and political pressure is mounting, whistleblowers are coming forth, and the stigma is lessening. We saw with the Grush revelations that even claims of alien craft can hit mainstream news and be discussed in Congress without the world falling apart. Perhaps officials who have long kept quiet feel that the public is ready now, unlike, say, in 1950. One can imagine a scenario in the near future where, spurred by congressional demands or a new leak, a Pentagon spokesperson might say, yes, over the decades, we have recovered some material and devices of unknown origin. Our analysis suggests we are not alone. That would be a watershed moment. Is it likely? It's still hard to say. It requires those holding the secret, if it exists, to decide to open up. One argument in favor of eventual disclosure is that secrecy is inherently hard to maintain indefinitely. As more time passes, more insiders come out on their deathbeds or through whistleblower protections, etc., and younger generations in government might not share the old attitudes of secrecy. Furthermore, if other countries, say hypothetically Russia or China or a private company like SpaceX, stumble on proof of aliens, the U.S. would lose the option to control the narrative. Thus, it might be incentivized to disclose on its own terms rather than be scooped. On the other hand, if by disclosure we mean simply more transparency on UAP investigations, that is already happening gradually. We can expect further official UAP reports, public scientific studies, for instance, NASA's panel is continuing its work, and maybe declassification of historical files. All right, so there's talk of a JFK-style declassification review for UAP secrets. So this kind of measured, non-committal disclosure could continue for years, acknowledging the mystery without pinning it on aliens. Many think that's the strategy, a slow drip of information that acclimates the public to the idea that UFOs as real unknowns, so that if evidence of non-human origin ever does emerge, it won't be a shock. This is something called soft disclosure or gradual disclosure scenario. However, full disclosure of non-human intelligence may not be a choice. It could be forced by circumstances. For instance, if UAP incidents drastically increase in visibility, such as a mass sighting over multiple cities or an undeniable landing, the government would have to address it in real time. Well, they didn't really address it in the New Jersey drone incident. They just lied about it. And every lie was dispelled until they just said that it was all FAA approved. So, our government is approving of God knows what these things are. Another catalyst could be detection of an unequivocal alien signature or megastructure by astronomers at SETI. If, say, a radio signature with clear encoded information is received by another star, governments would have to jointly announce that discovery, as it wouldn't be confined to one nation. That would be disclosure of cosmic non-human intelligence, not related to UFOs on Earth, but certainly changing the entire conversation about aliens. In any case, it feels like we are closer to some form of revelation in the coming years than we have ever been. Public polling shows a majority of people already suspect the government isn't telling everything about UFOs. Many also believe life exists beyond Earth. The taboo is eroding. When even former presidents and CIA directors casually discuss a topic, you know something has shifted. All right, so in that case, how might disclosure unfold? Let's imagine for a moment that disclosure with a capital D is going to happen, meaning a confirmation that we have evidence of non-human intelligence. How could this scenario play out? Well, there's a few possibilities often discussed. So there's the formal announcement. This is the classic expectation. A U.S. president, perhaps flanked by scientific advisors and military officials, addresses the nation and the world, disclosing that we are not alone. They might present recovered materials or footage or introduce officials who have been part of secret programs. In a staged way, evidence would be revealed. Maybe photos of an alien craft in a hangar, maybe some data from studying it, possibly even biological evidence of entities. This approach would be carefully scripted to reassure the public, emphasize stability. For instance, the government remains in control. The government has no control over this. If there's anything that's obvious, they have no control over it. I mean, it's not, they have no clue. They are not in charge. Something else is in charge, clearly. And call for immediate international cooperation. It would likely be done at a time of relative calm, not amid a major war or crisis. There might be an initial shock and frenzy, but ideally the clarity of the presentation would prevent panic. Some believe this is how it should be done, if done at all, to avoid miscommunication or rumors. The next route is the document dump leak route. Disclosure might not come out from on high, but from below, e.g., for instance, a massive leak of official documents or data through an insider or hacker. Imagine if thousands of files from a Lockheed Martin Skunkworks project dealing with a UFO were posted online with undeniable authenticity, or if an Edward Snowden type figure released videos of government test labs examining alien bodies. This could lead to a chaotic revelation where officials are caught flat-footed and have to confirm or deny on the fly. It might initially be messy with disinformation mixed in. Eventually, though, it would force a de facto disclosure because the proof would be in public hands. This route is unpredictable and could cause more public distress because it lacks an authoritative narrative. But with social media today, it's certainly possible that if the truth exists, it might break loose unexpectedly. The third way it might happen is through gradual integration, so no single event. Perhaps no single moment of disclosure will occur. Instead, we might see a continued trickle, more whistleblower testimony, more UAP evidence released, more scientific openness. Over a decade, this might reach a point where everyone kind of knows aliens are real, even without official proclamation. Then one day, a government memo, a statement casually acknowledges it as if it's already established fact. In this scenario, the public might not even be very shocked because they've been led to the conclusion step by step. This slow rollout approach is often what UFO disclosure theorists think has been happening since the 2010s, if not earlier. This is kind of how the pandemic narrative was rolled out. It was obvious from the jump that it was a bioweapon that was designed at the Wuhan Institute of Technology and that leaked. But we waited, and the government waited until now effectively to publish it on the White House website. Does this make anyone on this program feel good about it? Do you trust your government more after that? I sure as hell don't. They lied to us. They lied to us in real time, and there have been absolutely no consequences to it. So if anybody thinks that this is the way to do it, they're fucking wrong. Excuse my language. All right, so extraterrestrial, and by the way, the government has no credibility anymore anyway. So the only way that this thing could be disclosed is if the others, let's just call them, disclose. That's the only way. That's the only way it's ever going to work. So even if the president, I think, and it doesn't matter which president, this is not political, no one trusts the U.S. government anymore. There's no reason to trust them. None whatsoever. So a fourth way is the extraterrestrial initiatives. It's worth considering that any true disclosure may not be initiated by us at all. The extraterrestrials themselves might reveal their presence. There you go. I literally wasn't looking at this when I said, that was a perfect segue. I didn't even realize it. So if indeed an alien intelligence is here and has been hiding, it might choose to uncloak at some point if it's choosing. This could be dramatic as landing on the White House lawn, the classic trope, or broadcasting a message on all frequencies. If that were to happen, governments would be reacting rather than controlling the narrative. One hopes any species capable of that would be wise enough to do it gently, perhaps by initially contacting leaders. First of all, if there is another and they're listening, Do not start with the leaders. Those people are the least credible people with the least integrity. Start from the bottom up. Do a bottoms up approach so that so our leaders are caught flat-footed, because at this point, like, we're in the fourth turning and most of them need to go. So I'm just going to put that out there. And when I say need to go, I mean peaceful, turning and all that stuff, no violence, etc. But if the others are listening, the best way to do it is through the bottom up. Okay? Just ignore the leaders entirely. Most of them are psychopaths. Of course, this is pure conjecture. We do not know if any aliens are here or what their intentions are, but logically, disclosure is a two-way street. If we're dealing with autonomous intelligences, they have a say in when they make themselves overt. And then, of course, there's what I think is the most likely scenario: no disclosure. Status quo continues. It's also quite possible, and the reason is because it serves the people in power for us to be slaves, for us to work like slaves, for us to get sick early, for us to live just long enough to be, useful slaves, but to die quickly enough that we don't get to enjoy the wealth that we've created for ourselves. I think so. I think this is the most likely option, because if we know that there's a world beyond the pseudo slavery that humans kind of live through on Earth, like, we've convinced ourselves we're free, but we're not. We're serfs. So it's also quite possible that what many hope for, a clear answer, may not come in the foreseeable future. If the reality is that we truly lack concrete evidence, i.e., there might be exotic UAP, but even the government can't trace them to ET, then there might never be a grand revelation, only endless investigation. Or if there is evidence, but secrecy holds firm, we could see another few decades of the topic being mystified but not resolved. Some argue that entrenched interests, perhaps a breakaway group, or simply the inertia of bureaucracy, will keep the lid on because the implication of disclosure, free energy tech, mass belief system upheaval, liability for past cover-ups are too daunting. That's exactly right. The people don't want to, our betters don't want to lose all their toys, right? They don't want to lose their slaves, and they don't want to be devoured by them. Ufology history is littered with predictions of imminent disclosure that failed to materialize, so one must acknowledge the possibility that the current momentum could also stall. Assuming some form of disclosure does occur, it's likely to be accompanied by extensive context. This means we'll hear why the secret was kept. So, for instance, national security during the Cold War fear. This will be fun to listen to. Listen to, like, whatever lie they concoct. Man, it's going to be fun to like immediately shoot down. What the government knows and does not know. They might say, yes, some vehicles are non-human, but we have not actually made contact or figured out their origin, and assurances about our safety. Expect involvement from scientific figures to discuss how this fits with our understanding of life in the universe. There may also be religious outreach, considering the impact on faith communities, though interestingly, many religious leaders have indicated such a discovery wouldn't shatter faith, just broaden it. One also wonders, would disclosure be total or phased? There's no way it'll be total, because there'll be some legitimate national security secrets that you can't reveal. Even I would allow for that. Even after an initial bombshell, we have alien craft, there might be further secrets that are drip-fed. For example, maybe first they admit to vehicles, later to bodies, later to actual communication with aliens, etc. Depending on what is true, they might not spill it all at once. The adjustment for humanity might be planned in stages, especially if there are negative aspects. Oh, and there are negative aspects, I guarantee that. Like say some abductions were real and not pleasant. How would that be told to the public without causing anger or fear? All right, so the next question is are non-human intelligences already here, operating in the shadows? So what's the possibility that intelligence non-human entities are already here on Earth, perhaps working behind the scene? This idea, while sensational, is a recurring theme in conspiracy theories and even in some official statements. Let's unpack it carefully. There are multiple levels to aliens are already among us. On one hand, you have the benign concept often discussed by figures like Paul Hellyer, the former Canadian defense minister we met earlier, that several extraterrestrial species have been visiting Earth for ages, and some blend in with human society. Hellier famously stated that he's learned of 4 species of aliens routinely visiting Earth, and that some of them look just like us. You could sit next to one on an airplane and not know, including tales of alien ladies going shopping dressed as nuns in Las Vegas. According to Hellier, many ETs are benevolent and even concerned about our warlike tendencies and environmental stewardship. He suggested they are holding back from open contact until we humans get our act together, because they fear a cultural shock or conflict. He also asserted that some technological leaps, microchips, fiber optics, Kevlar, came from alien inspiration, implying a quiet collaboration in certain quarters. This narrative paints a picture of aliens as covert observers and occasional helpers, possibly working through select human partners. It's a very optimistic scenario in terms of their intent, though it does mean our institutions have likely been infiltrated to some degree by non-humans, or at least by their guidance. On the other hand, there are darker notions, the likes of Men in Black lore, where human-appearing entities, sometimes presumed alien or alien hybrids, actively work to silence UFO witnesses and manipulate events, or the theories of authors like David Icke, who goes on to an extreme claiming shape-shifting reptilian aliens impersonate world leaders, an idea widely dismissed as fringe and lacking evidence. Then there's also the idea that some aliens may not be flesh and blood in the traditional sense, but could be interdimensional beings or even an ancient terrestrial intelligence that predates human. So, for instance, ultra-terrestrials or crypto-terrestrials. If any of those were true, they could potentially mingle in our world unbeknownst to us. So is there evidence of non-humans among us? No hard evidence, no. Most claims are anecdotal or rest on esoteric interpretations. However, to play devil's advocate, if an advanced species had the capability to come here, it might also have the means to appear as human or to be undetectable. We wouldn't necessarily know. Scientific fiction has long toyed with this idea, i.e., alien infiltrators that look human. One intriguing sub-theory relates to hybridization. Many alien abductee accounts, as noted, involve reproductive experiments. Some experiencers claim that the aliens were created human-alien hybrids and that these hybrids might be living among us. A few women even reported mysterious pregnancies that ended abruptly, with the implication being the fetus was removed and grown elsewhere. These stories are unverified, but a handful of researchers like Dr. David Jacobs believes the endgame of abductions could be a slow integration of hybrids into human society. It sounds far-fetched, and yet that is precisely the plot in some sci-fi, like the TV series X-Files. Without concrete proof, this remains speculation. If non-human entities are already integrated at some level, it raises enormous concerns. Are they influencing our institutions, like government, corporations, religions, for their own agenda? Some conspiracies or conspiracists think so. For example, there are persistent theories that elements within the government, a shadow government or deep state, are actually liaising with aliens and implementing policies under their direction. This, however, slides into extremely speculative territory. A more grounded approach might be, it's possible that some people in high positions know about aliens or even interact with them, but that's not the same as aliens literally running those positions. Looking at what credible people have said, Hellier again believed that most aliens are friendly and that at least one or two of these species working with us are Nordic types, which are typically indistinguishable from humans. He also mentioned that a couple of species might not be so friendly. He urged world governments to disclose and even claimed Snowden-type whistleblowers have given evidence of alien visitation. His perspective is unique because of his former official capacity, but critics note that after leaving office, he came to believe many unverified stories. Essentially, he's relaying what UFO enthusiasts told him rather than firsthand knowledge. Still, it's fascinating that a person of his stature would openly assert alien presence among us as factual. If intelligent non-humans operate behind the scenes, one could argue we see hints in historical anomalies. Some point to unexplained leaps in human civilization or mysterious knowledge by ancient cultures as evidence of past alien guidance, i.e., the ancient astronaut theory. Others look at modern events, for example, the way UFOs have shown intense interest in nuclear facilities, such as cases of UFOs hovering over missile silos and allegedly disabling ICBMs or triggering them in both the US and USSR are documented. And theorize maybe they're covertly ensuring we don't destroy ourselves in nuclear war. That suggests a hidden hand trying to steer humanity away from catastrophe from behind the curtain. On the flip side, some wonder if non-humans might be exploiting us in some way, the so-called Loosh hypothesis, or other unfalsifiable ideas that aliens feed off human fear, etc. While these dark scenarios make for dramatic talk, there's no concrete evidence of hostile alien takeovers. If anything, the historical record, if one believes UFOs have been around for decades, shows restraint on their part. They haven't openly colonized or attacked us. That lends some credence to the notion, if they are here, they are likely neutral observers or benevolent or indifferent. Because if they meant overt harm, one imagines we would have seen it by now. In a disclosure context, if aliens are already intermingled with us, that could be the most explosive secret at all. Far more than simply we found a crashed saucer. It would mean they're here and perhaps have been here for a long time. Societally, that would be a huge paradigm shift. People might react with suspicion towards others. Anybody could be an alien. There could be witch hunts or paranoia, which might be one reason such information, if true, would be tightly guarded. One could argue that if some aliens live among us peacefully, even they might prefer not to be outed to avoid public backlash. It's a very tricky aspect of the phenomenon. In conclusion on this point, the idea of non-human intelligences operating in secret on Earth remains an unverified hypothesis. It is not widely accepted in the scientific community or by the public at large, beyond entertainment. However, it is a staple of UFO lore and occasionally surfaces via notable individual statements. Should disclosure occur, it's one of the more unsettling possibilities that might need addressing. For instance, a disclosure announcement might explicitly say, we have no evidence that aliens are currently on Earth beyond remote sightings to dispel these fears, or conversely, it might confirm some presence which would be world-changing in the extreme. So in conclusion, the story of UAPs, from the hazy accounts of a Missouri preacher in 1941 to the halls of Congress in 2023, is a complex tapestry woven of verified events, mysterious encounters, cover-ups, suspicions, and speculative leaps. We have seen how initial incidents like Roswell seeded the idea that perhaps someone out there has visited, and how the subsequent Cold War climate could have driven secrecy. We traced how, over time, a subculture of ufologists and whistleblowers emerged, sometimes surfacing remarkable claims like crashed saucers, secret treaties, alien collaborations, without definitive proof. Parallel to that, the legitimate scientific quest for extraterrestrial life has made strides, finding thousands of exoplanets and even hints of life's chemical signatures in distant atmospheres. These scientific advances don't validate the UFO lore directly, but they make the prospect of life in the universe ever more real, and by extension, lend a little more plausibility to the notion that some life might be technologically ahead of us and possibly here. As of now, the U.S. federal government's stance on UAP has shifted from outright denial to cautious acknowledgement of the mystery. They admit some things seen by pilots are beyond our current understanding, but they refrain from speculating on origin in public. Pressure is building for more transparency. Even legislation is being proposed to open UFO archives. It feels like we are in a moment akin to the final chapters of a long detective novel. Clues are coming together, secrets are starting to unravel, but we don't have the full resolution yet. We assess the likelihood of full disclosure of non-human intelligence. It appears that eventual disclosure is plausible, especially if evidence becomes too great to contain or if global events prompt it. Imminent disclosure in the very short term remains uncertain. It could happen if a whistleblower presents smoking gun evidence or if an unpredictable incident occurs. But barring that, the trend may be a continued gradual openness. The government might prefer to normalize the idea of UAPs first, which they've done a remarkable job of since 2017. UFOs are no longer a tinfoil hat topic in the news, then perhaps later dip into the harder truths. How might it unfold if it does? Possibly a carefully managed release of information, perhaps in collaboration with other major nations and scientists to minimize shock and maximize understanding. The world's response would depend on how much context and reassurance accompanies the news. One hopes it would be more marvel and less panic. Our species has a way of absorbing even the most astonishing things and moving forward. Consider how the revelations of the atomic bomb or genome editing or the internet itself changed society, yet we adapted. Learning we are not alone would be profound, but humanity would grapple with it and eventually incorporate it into our worldview. Finally, regarding the idea that aliens are already here among us, it remains one of the more controversial assertions. No official body has ever hinted this is the case. If it were true, it would suggest a scenario almost out of science fiction in which disclosure might even involve introducing an alien individual or confirming that some historical figures were alien. That's highly speculative. It's mentioned here to be thorough, but it's a claim with virtually no public evidence. Until that changes, it will continue to live in the realm of theories and the fringes of the disclosure movement. In presenting this report, we maintain an open-minded tone, considering possibilities without endorsing unfounded claims. It's clear that some aspects, like Roswell's UFO nature, the reality of any secret treaty, or the presence of alien bases, are widely disputed and unconfirmed. We've labeled them as such and provided sources that often include the skeptical or official perspective. So, for instance, FBI clarifications on Roswell and Aztec. Other aspects like the government's genuine UAP investigations and the scientific discoveries of exoplanets are solid facts backed by evidence and cited accordingly. This dichotomy between what we know and what we think might be is at the heart of the UAP discussion. In closing, one might say the UAP UFO issue is ultimately a quest for truth about our place in the cosmos. Are we being visited? Have we been visited in the past? Or are all these phenomena something entirely different? Perhaps natural phenomena we don't understand yet, or advanced human tech in black projects. The U.S. government holds many secrets, but also many scientists within it honestly seek answers. The coming years will likely see increased collaboration between military intelligence and scientific communities to solve this riddle. And if indeed the answer is yes, there are others, and we are not alone, that disclosure, whenever it comes, will mark a turning point in human history, opening a new chapter that has been imagined in fiction for generations but never officially confirmed. Until then, we must navigate carefully between enthusiasm and skepticism, keeping an eye on the skies and an ear on the ground for what one day, when speculation becomes confirmation. All right, let's go through the comments. Ooh, that was a long one. That was a long one. So let's see, where did we end up? Just bear with me, folks. I have to go backward a lot. Okay. Interesting. So Solar US Expat is saying Phobos, one of the moons of Mars, is hollow. John Vivanco and his team of remote viewers remote viewed it. All right, I went through a lot of these already. Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Well, you can blame the CIA for inventing the term conspiracy theory. King James is writing, folks who refuse to research this topic have no clue about the mountain of evidence available and choose to brand everything conspiracy theory. Yeah, basically the nightly news. Everything you hear in the nightly news is a conspiracy. We've learned, if you haven't learned that since 2020, then you haven't learned anything. So Terrence Wills is writing, does it feel like AI and alien disclosure are on parallel tracks? It seems like it. Yeah, okay. So I was talking to a guy named Rich Geldrich about this, and I think the answer is yes, because AI is evolving so quickly that people like us are going to be able to use its power to reveal mysterious connections and kind of that a human mind would be able to quickly put together and amass all this information quickly enough that we'll independently amass enough evidence to disclose ourselves. So government is going to be caught flat-footed. They can either slowly reveal information as this develops, or they can manipulate AI. Guess which one I think they'll do, right? I think they're going to start manipulating AI pretty soon. I mean, they already have, right? Like try Gemini, right? It's a if you wanted to draw a picture of a like a white Yahtzee, right? You can't. like so Thank you, Anjali. I appreciate you. Thank you for coming on and watching. Yes, please do hit the like button, and also just share as much as you can, because YouTube's not. Like YouTube is definitely just as a data point. I made more money with less views. So with 20% of the views, I made more money on Spotify than I did on YouTube in the last month. So YouTube has definitely changed their algorithm for whatever reason, and I think it harms channels that are between 10,000 and 100,000 subscribers. So, yep, Michael, you're 100% right. For any piece of news, ask the question, "Why am I being told this?" And the second question you ask is, "Who benefits from this information?" Hey, good to see you. I'm rolling with boner dice. I'll see you, King James. Happy Easter. So Miss Tammy's writing. That's what I think they'll keep giving slivers and control the narrative the whole time. 100%. Yep. So Terrence Wills is writing. Do you get the feeling they're only telling us anything because they have to? They definitely aren't doing it. Yeah, 100%. They have to, because we're going to figure it out for ourselves, and when we do, like, they're not going to be able to control the narrative, and some people are going to want to rip these people apart. So yeah, yeah, of course. Okay, so Roger Claiborne is writing, at this point, if the government does not disclose proof, who will believe them? Or if government does disclose proof, who will believe them? Not me. I'll believe it when I see it for myself in the world. Yeah, I'm with you. I don't believe anything the government says anymore. Okay, so Roger Claiborne writes, I believe the government planned it all and released the C word and the V word leaking out accidentally, just another cover. I don't know. It's a far leap for me to think that they're that psychopathic, but it is interesting that when China, Japan, the United States have a demographic crisis, right, where the aging population is reaching a critical mass, most diseases that come out attack the weakest elements of the population, which tend to be the very old and the very young. This one uniquely targets the very old. It's clearly, like, particularly for the Chinese, who have the biggest problem with an aging demographic, that solves a big problem for them. So I would not be surprised at all if, I don't know, maybe it was accidentally on purpose released, but it was definitely designed to to reduce that population. Yeah, I'm not going to read what you said out loud because I don't want to get demonetized. I'm cold, but I agree. Like that's what flipped me. That like after that, like, and is anybody in handcuffs yet? Right? We're talking like the current administration. We got Pam Bondi doing all this talk. Like I don't give a rat's ass what you say. It's what you do, and you haven't done anything. No one has like no elite has been. Um, I forget what it's called, but like has been handcuffed and done the walk of shame. Not a single one. And you know what? They won't. They won't. These people can get away with whatever they want. That's the way our system works now, right? The rules are for thee, not for me. So Gray Owl's writing, Nick Pope recently said that if the recent zombie apocalypse was a test for how we handle big news, then we failed miserably. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I think the numbers of unalivings are very high in China. Let's see. Yeah, Michael Kenny's writing is if ETs do the disclosure, we are in big trouble. They obviously do not want us to know what they are up to. Yep. If they are done preparing and do a public reveal, it's because the change is upon us and they're making their move. Maybe. But I do agree with you that them being quiet is highly suspicious. Oh man. Yeah, there could be a Black Swan event, Terrence. I don't know that's coming. Yeah, that's all I have about the alien nuns. I don't have much of a story beyond that. Yeah, who knows if Giorgiani's right, but Fasma Mojama's right. Jason Giorgiani told the story of Deep State in the Danny Jones podcast. How do you, so yeah, I'm cold rights. This is gonna sound schizo, but I've seen them at a casino. I mean, I can't disprove that claim. I can't prove it either, but I'd be interested to hear the story. That's a great question, Maria. To I'm cold. Do you get a certain feeling when seeing them? Oh wow. So I'm cold responded no, but there was this 7.5 foot tall woman in a blue dress with geometric patterns walking with 5 foot tall people surrounding her in a circle. And I thought to myself, these people look weird. And then I'm cold continues to write, as soon as I thought that she looked back at me, like, shut up, and they started walking away very fast. Okay, so I'm cold writes, can't say, but she had an elongated face with white blonde hair. I would guess Nordic, if anything. The short people were surrounding her in a circle right up against her, very awkward looking. Would just have been some weird people, who knows? So Soulite US Expat, it seems you have gained like 300 to 400 subscribers in a month. Was it? So that's actually a bad month. But in like recent days, I got a spike because Nathaniel Gillis appeared on something called the oh, what's the name of that podcast? there's some podcast he appeared on, and people like rushed to my channel there, and then part of it was Dolan, but my Dolan episode got far less than like anybody else who interviewed Dolan would typically get. So, but I'm still under 400 subscribers for April. An okay month would be 500, but like in standard mathematics, that number should be accelerating. I should be getting 1,000 a month minimum, but I'm not. So it is what it is. I mean, I just keep doing what I'm doing. Happy Easter, Dookie Pickles. I appreciate that, Gray Al. Gray Al really enjoyed the interview. No, I have not. I have not seen any owls recently, unfortunately. Yeah, I hope. Yes, that's what it was. It was the Confessionals podcast. I need to like track it back to source to see it. I just haven't had time yet. Yeah, I got along with him really well too. He probably said a few things that he probably regrets saying, at least publicly. I don't think he he believes everything he said, but anyway. All right, we're like 9 minutes over, so I think it's time for me to call it a night. So thank you everybody for watching, and I'll have a wonderful remainder of Easter and great night and great week. Thank you again.